The spreadsheet had 17 columns and 43 rows. I'd been staring at it for 6 minutes, watching the cursor blink in cell B7, when I understood what Marcus had done. Not suspected. Not wondered. Understood. The transfers started 3 days after Dad's stroke, when he could still sign his name but couldn't tell you what day it was. Small amounts at first. 2,000 here. 1,500 there. Then the amounts got comfortable. But by the time Dad died, Marcus had moved $340,000 through accounts I didn't know existed. My name is David, and I'm looking at a document that proves my brother started stealing from our father while he was dying. The cursor kept blinking. Outside my window, someone was mowing their lawn. Thursday afternoon. Regular life happening while I sat in my home office with my coffee gone cold, looking at proof that the person I'd trusted most in the world had spent 18 months robbing our father blind. Marcus had been so careful. He'd set up the accounts in Dad's name with addresses that forwarded to his P.O. box. He'd timed the transfers around Dad's medication schedule when the morphine had him foggy but functional. He'd even kept some of the money in those accounts, probably to make it look like Dad was managing his own finances right up until the end. The financial advisor's email sat open in another window. Per your request, attached is the comprehensive account activity for Harold Chin, deceased. Please note the authorized signatories on accounts ending in 4477, 8293, and 6651. I'd called them about Dad's pension distribution. Standard estate stuff. I almost didn't open the attachment. It was labeled Account Summary Full History, and I'd assumed it was just the main checking account. They'd sent me this instead. Marcus was listed as co-owner on all 3 accounts. The final transfer was dated 4 days before the funeral. He'd moved $60,000 the same week he'd given the eulogy. The same week he'd hugged me in the parking lot and said, "At least we have each other." I printed the spreadsheet. All 43 pages. Marcus was 3 years older, which meant something when we were kids. He got his license first, left for college first, built the kind of life Dad actually approved of. Corporate law. Corner office in Seattle. A wife who sent tasteful Christmas cards. I taught high school history and lived in the same town where we grew up, 15 minutes from Dad's house. When Mom died 6 years ago, Marcus flew in for the service and flew back out 3 days later. I was the one who helped Dad box up her clothes. Who showed up when the garbage disposal broke. Who drove him to his cardiology appointments. We didn't fight about it. Marcus sent money sometimes. Called on birthdays. He sent flowers on the anniversary of Mom's death every year, white lilies, her favorite. They'd arrive at Dad's house first thing in the morning. He never called, but the flowers always came. Dad would put them on the kitchen table and stare at them for hours. We had an understanding that felt normal enough until it didn't matter anymore. Dad left post-it notes everywhere. On the fridge, check oil. On the bathroom mirror, floss, you're not 20. On my truck dashboard after he'd borrowed it, tanks full. Drive safe. Little reminders in his cramped handwriting, stuck to every surface like he was afraid we'd forget the small things that mattered. Dad's stroke happened on a Tuesday morning. I found him in the garden, one hand still holding the pruning shears, the other curled against his chest. The neurologist said he'd recover some function, but the man who came home from the hospital wasn't the man who'd left. He knew us. He could speak, though the words came slow and thick. But something essential had shifted. The sharpness was gone. The post-it note stopped. He'd start to write one and forget what he wanted to say halfway through. He signed things I put in front of him. He nodded when I explained his medications. He trusted me completely, which should have felt like a gift and instead felt like watching him become a child. Marcus visited twice in those 18 months. Christmas and Easter. Both times he stayed in a hotel. Both times he spent hours alone with Dad, going through paperwork, he said, getting the estate organized. Making sure everything was set up right for when the time came. I'd been grateful. Marcus handling the financial stuff felt like him finally stepping up. Like him taking something off my plate. The funeral was on a Saturday in March. Marcus wore Dad's watch. I didn't think anything of it then. I opened the attachment while waiting for a parent-teacher conference to start. Thursday evening, sitting in the hallway outside the gym, my phone propped on my knee. The financial advisor had sent it that afternoon with a note about pension distribution forms I needed to sign. Routine estate stuff. The file was labeled Account Summary Full History, and I'd assumed it was just Dad's main checking account. 17 columns. 43 rows. Accounts I'd never heard of. I sat in the hallway with the sounds of a volleyball game echoing from the gym and felt the floor tilt. Account 4,477. Account 8,293. Account 6,651. Each one with Dad's name and Marcus listed as co-owner. Each one with a history of transfers I'd never authorized, never knew about, never even suspected. The date started 3 days after Dad's stroke. The amounts were careful at first, then bold. I scrolled through the spreadsheet twice before I understood what I was seeing. This wasn't estate planning. This wasn't helping Dad manage his money. This was systematic, methodical. The transfers happened on specific days, days I recognized. Days when I'd had after-school meetings. Days when I'd taken Dad to appointments. Marcus had timed every single transaction around my schedule. The parent walked up and asked if I was ready. I looked at her for a long moment before I remembered where I was. "I'm sorry," I said. "I need to reschedule." I sat in my truck in the parking lot and went through the spreadsheet line by line. The last transfer was dated 4 days before the funeral. $60,000 moved from Dad's checking to account 8293 while I was picking out a casket and writing the obituary. I started the truck and drove to Thomas Brennan's office without calling first. Thomas Brennan had been Dad's attorney for 30 years. Semi-retired now, but he'd done Dad's original will back when Mom was alive. His office was closed when I got there, but I called his cell. He answered on the second ring. "David? What's wrong? I need you to look at something. Tonight, if possible." He met me at his office 20 minutes later. I showed him the spreadsheet on my laptop. He read it without saying anything, scrolling through page after page. When he finished, he sat back in his chair. "Your father came to see me in 2019, he said. Wanted to update his will. Simple stuff. Split everything 50-50 between his sons. Very straightforward. This," he gestured at the screen, "this isn't that will." The life insurance policy came next. I found it 3 days later, going through Dad's filing cabinet to pull his birth certificate for estate paperwork. The folder was labeled Pacific Life, updated 2019. I'd never seen it before. Dad had a policy through his pension, I knew that, $25,000 to cover funeral costs. We'd already claimed it. This was different. The policy was for $500,000. Beneficiary, Marcus David Chin. There was no second beneficiary listed. The application was dated November of Dad's stroke year. 2 months after the hospital. Dad's signature at the bottom, witnessed by someone named Robert Kemp and notarized by Patricia Vance from a UPS store in Seattle. I checked Dad's bank statements from November. No payment to Pacific Life. I called the insurance company. The premium was being paid through automatic withdrawal from account 4477. The one from the financial advisor's email. The one Marcus co-owned. I asked if they had documentation of the medical exam required for a policy that size. They did. It had been conducted via phone interview on November 14th at 2 in the afternoon. I checked my school calendar. November 14th was a Thursday. I'd taught until 3, then driven straight to Dad's house like I did every Thursday. He'd been alone all day. The company said the interview had been recorded. Would I like to request a copy? I would. The recording arrived 4 days later. I listened to it in my car, parked in the school lot after last bell. A woman's voice asking questions. A man's voice answering. The man sounded like Dad. Same timbre, same cadence. He answered questions about his medical history, his medications, his family history of heart disease. He sounded sharp, competent. Nothing like the man who'd asked me that morning what year Mom died. Then the interviewer asked him to confirm his address. He recited it perfectly. The house on Maple Street where he'd lived for 40 years. In November, when this was supposedly recorded, Dad couldn't remember his own address. I'd watched him try to fill out a form at the pharmacy. He'd started writing the address from the house we'd lived in when I was in elementary school, the one we'd moved out of in 1987. I played it for my wife that night. Sarah had known Dad for 20 years. She'd had dinner with him every Sunday before the stroke. She listened to the whole thing without saying anything, her hand pressed against her mouth. When it finished, she looked at me. "That's not recent," she said. "That's from before." I called Robert Kemp the next morning, the witness from the insurance application. He answered on the third ring. I said I was calling about a life insurance policy he'd witnessed for Harold Chin. There was a long pause. "I never witnessed any insurance policy," he said. "Who is this?" Robert Kemp was Marcus's college roommate. I found his wedding announcement online. Marcus had been his best man. I asked if Marcus had ever asked him to witness a document for our father. Another pause. "Look, I signed some papers for Marcus a few years back. He said he needed witnesses for estate planning stuff for his dad. I don't remember what they were. I barely looked at them. Marcus is a lawyer. I trusted him. A few years back. Before the stroke. Maybe before Dad was even sick. I didn't call Marcus. Not that night, not the next day, not the next week. Sarah asked if I was going to confront him. I said I didn't know yet. What I knew was that confronting Marcus would give him time to prepare. Time to move money. Time to get his story straight. He was a lawyer. He was good at this. Better than me. I started making lists instead. Every account I knew about. Every document I'd found. Every discrepancy in dates, signatures, locations. I pulled Dad's calendar from the year of the stroke. The one I'd kept for his appointments. I cross-referenced it with every piece of paper Marcus had filed or notarized. Dad had a dentist appointment the day the power of attorney was supposedly signed in Seattle. I'd driven him there myself. The original will named me as executor. I'd found that out from Thomas. Even though Marcus had filed a different version, the court would likely reinstate my position once they invalidated his fraud. Which meant I was legally responsible for cataloging every asset, every debt, every account. Including the ones Marcus had drained. I'd have to sit with bank representatives and explain that yes, those transfers were made from my father's account, and no, my father didn't authorize them, and yes, it was his other son who stole from him. I made copies of everything. Printed emails. Saved recordings. I backed it all up to 3 different drives and gave one to Sarah's brother, who worked in IT and asked no questions. I opened a safety deposit box at a bank Marcus didn't use and put the originals there. Every night I came home and added something to the files. A new account statement. A pharmacy record proving Dad had been too medicated to make decisions on dates Marcus claimed he was competent. A phone record showing Marcus had called the insurance company from Seattle while Dad was at a neurology appointment with me. I called Dr. Patel, Dad's neurologist. I asked if there was any period after the stroke where Dad would have been competent to make complex financial decisions. She pulled his records. "Your father had significant cognitive impairment from day one," she said. "Short-term memory loss, executive function deficits, impaired judgment. I documented it at every visit. Why are you asking?" I told her someone had filed legal documents on his behalf claiming he was competent. The line went quiet for a long time. "I would testify otherwise," she said. Sarah thought I should call the police. I thought about it. But what I had was complicated. I needed someone who understood estate law. Someone who could look at what I had and tell me if it was enough. I called Thomas. His secretary said he was semi-retired now, only taking select cases. I said this was about Harold Chen's estate and potential fraud. She put me through. "I was wondering when you'd call," Thomas said. Thomas's office was in the same building it had been since before I was born. 3rd floor, overlooking Main Street, with law books nobody probably opened anymore and a coffee maker that looked older than me. He was 73, white hair, steady hands. He'd done Mom's will. He'd helped Dad set up the trust when I was in college. He knew our family. He had a file folder on his desk when I walked in. Thick. My name already on it. Your father came to see me in 2019, Thomas said. Wanted to update his will. Simple stuff. Split everything 50-50 between his sons. The house, the accounts, the pension. Very straightforward. We executed it in May. I have the original here. Your father was sharp as ever. We talked about the Mariners for 20 minutes before we got to business. He slid a copy across the desk. I read it. Everything divided equally. Me as executor. Specific bequests for a few items. Mom's wedding ring to me, Dad's watch to Marcus, some tools and books divided up. Dated May 14, 2019. 2 years before the stroke. Marcus submitted a different will for probate, Thomas said. Dated February of last year. After your father's stroke. The language was different. More sophisticated. And it left everything to Marcus except the house, which he generously allowed to go to you. I requested the original for authentication. Marcus said your father had it. I asked to see your father's medical records from that time period. Marcus said that was unnecessary and potentially a breach of attorney-client privilege. I declined to certify it. So what happened? Marcus filed it with a different attorney. Someone from his firm in Seattle. They certified it. It's been entered into probate. Unless someone contests it, it stands. I pulled out my folder. The insurance policy. The account statements. The notary records. The phone recording. Dr. Patel's notes. Thomas went through it piece by piece, making notes on a legal pad. He stopped at the insurance recording. May I? He asked. I nodded. He played it. Listened to the whole thing. Rewound and played one section again. The part where the interviewer asked about Dad's birth date. The voice on the recording gave the wrong month. Off by 2 months. A small thing. Easy to miss. Thomas wrote something down. This recording was made 2 years before the application date, he said. I'd stake my career on it. The interviewer mentions healthcare changes from the ACA implementation. Those were 2017, 2018. And your father's voice is strong here. Nothing like what you described after the stroke. He set down his pen and looked at me. What you have is fraud. Systematic, premeditated fraud. Your brother didn't make a mistake or take advantage of an opportunity. He planned this. He gathered signatures, created documents, opened accounts. All of it designed to take your father's estate. Can we prove it? We can. But it won't be fast, and it won't be easy. Your brother is a lawyer. He'll fight. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Dad's watch. Marcus wearing it at the funeral. Yes. The petition to contest the will went to probate court on a Monday morning. Thomas filed it himself. Undue influence. Forgery. Elder abuse. Each claim supported by 30 pages of documentation. We requested a full forensic audit of every account Dad had owned or co-owned in the last 5 years. We requested handwriting analysis on every signature. We requested Marcus's phone records, his bank records, his travel records. We asked the court to freeze all disbursements from the estate pending investigation. Marcus called me at 6:47 that evening. I'd expected it earlier. What the hell is this, David? His voice had that controlled anger. The tone he used to use when I'd borrowed his car without asking. Like I was being unreasonable and he was being patient. It's exactly what it says it is. You're contesting Dad's will. You're accusing me of fraud. Over what? Because you're upset about how things were divided. I'm upset that you forged documents while Dad was dying. I'm upset that you stole $340,000. I'm upset that you had him sign insurance papers when he couldn't remember what month it was. Silence on the line. Long enough that I thought he might have hung up. You don't know what you're talking about, he said finally. Dad wanted me to handle his finances. He trusted me. He signed everything willingly. He signed some things willingly. Years ago. Before he got sick. You used those signatures for everything else. You can't prove that. I have the notary records. I have Dad's medical appointments. I have him in the dentist's chair the same day you supposedly had him in a UPS store in Seattle. I have the insurance recording where he gets his own birth date wrong. I have Dr. Patel ready to testify about his cognitive impairment. I have all of it, Marcus. Another silence. Different this time. I could hear him breathing. I was trying to protect the estate, he said. Keep it out of probate complications. Dad would have wanted. Don't tell me what Dad would have wanted. You don't get to do that anymore. David. I'll see you in court. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Sarah came and stood next to me, not saying anything. Just standing there. The forensic accountant's name was Linda Marsh. She'd worked with Thomas before on estate cases. She was methodical. She started with the obvious accounts and worked backward through every transaction, every transfer, every check. She found accounts I didn't know existed. A money market fund. A CD that had matured and been rolled over 3 times. A savings account at a credit union 40 miles away that had been opened in 1987 and forgotten about until Marcus found it. Each account told the same story. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. Money moved on specific days, always when I had documented proof that I was with Dad, which meant Marcus knew my schedule. He timed it deliberately. Moved money while I was driving Dad to appointments, while I was teaching, while I was at school events with my own kids. He'd been careful about amounts too. Never enough to trigger bank alerts. Never round numbers. Everything designed to look like normal account management. But Linda found the pattern. Every transfer happened within 48 hours of Dad receiving his pension deposit or his Social Security payment. Marcus was skimming off the top before Dad's regular bills could even process. The handwriting analysis came back 3 weeks after filing. Dr. Patricia Huang, forensic document examiner. 23 years of experience. She'd compared signatures from before the stroke with signatures from after, and signatures on the disputed documents. Her report was technical, full of terms like pen pressure variation and baseline consistency. The conclusion was simple. Every signature on documents dated after the stroke had been copied from earlier documents. Not forged in the traditional sense. Traced. Transferred. Reproduced using technology and practice. Marcus had literally copy-pasted Dad's signature from old documents onto new ones. The worst discovery came from Dad's iPad. I'd forgotten about it until I was packing up his house. It was in his nightstand, dead battery. I charged it and found his email. There were dozens of messages to Marcus from the last year of Dad's life. Short ones. How do I pay the electric bill? Can you help me understand this letter from the bank? I can't remember how to transfer money. Each one unanswered or answered with, I'll take care of it, Dad. Don't worry about it. I found one from November, right around when the insurance policy was filed. Marcus, did I sign papers for something? I don't remember. Marcus had responded, just estate planning stuff we talked about. All standard. Nothing to worry about. Then I found consultations Marcus had scheduled with estate attorneys in 2018. Before Dad's stroke. Before Dad was even sick. The consultation notes were in discovery from one of the firms. Client inquires about managing elderly parents' finances. Asks about POA scope. Asks about early inheritance structures. Asks about transfer timing to minimize tax exposure. The attorney had written a note at the bottom. Declined to take case. Something off. Marcus had been planning this for at least 3 years. Waiting for an opportunity. The stroke had just given him the excuse he needed. Thomas called it the smoking gun. We were in his office going through Linda's final report when he found it. Page 47. A transfer request form from January, 2 months before Dad died. $50,000 from Dad's main checking to account 8293. The one I'd never heard of. The request form had been submitted online through the bank's web portal. It required 2-factor authentication, password and a code sent to Dad's phone. Linda had subpoenaed the bank's server logs. The IP address for the transfer request traced back to Seattle. Marcus's home address. The phone number for the authentication code was Dad's number, but the records showed the text message had been forwarded to a different number. Marcus's number. He'd set up call forwarding on Dad's phone without Dad knowing. Every security code, every verification message, it all went to Marcus. He had complete access, Thomas said. Your father thought his accounts were secure. Password protected. Two-factor authentication. All of it meaningless because Marcus had set himself up as a mirror. I thought about the times Marcus had helped Dad set up his iPad. How he'd insisted on installing certain apps for security. How Dad had trusted him completely because Marcus was the successful one, the lawyer, the one who understood technology. The phone forwarding had been activated 3 days after the stroke. Right when Dad came home from the hospital, still foggy from medication, still trying to remember how to work the TV remote. Marcus had flown in, spent 1 day at the house, and left. That was when he'd done it. 1 visit. Access to everything. Linda had tracked every transfer after that point. 147 transactions over 18 months. Total of $387,000. Marcus had moved it through 6 different accounts before finally consolidating it in an investment portfolio under his own name. He'd been so confident he'd even claimed the interest as income on his taxes. This is beyond civil fraud, Thomas said. This is criminal. Elder abuse. Forgery. The prosecutor will be interested. I looked at the timeline Linda had created. Every theft mapped against Dad's medical decline. The worse Dad got, the more Marcus took. The last transfer was dated 3 days before Dad stopped eating. A week before he died. Marcus had cleaned him out and then eulogized him. The hearing was in Judge Patricia Morrison's courtroom. Probate division. 2nd floor of the county courthouse in a room with wood paneling from 1973 and fluorescent lights that hummed. Marcus arrived with 2 attorneys from his firm. Young, expensive-looking. The kind who carried leather briefcases and had their shoes shined. I had Thomas. He wore the same suit he'd probably worn for 40 years and carried a file box with everything we'd found. Marcus didn't look at me. He sat at his table and spoke quietly to his lawyers while they arranged their documents. He'd lost weight. His collar looked loose. The watch, Dad's watch, was gone from his wrist. Judge Morrison was 60-something, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She'd reviewed our filings. All of them. She started by asking Marcus's lead attorney to explain their position. Your Honor, this is a family dispute dressed up as fraud. Harold Shin had full mental capacity when he updated his will and his financial arrangements. He chose to leave the bulk of his estate to Marcus Chun because Marcus had been handling his affairs for years. The contestant is upset about his father's decisions and is attempting to use the court system to overturn them. Have you reviewed the handwriting analysis submitted by the contestant? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. We believe Dr. Huang's methodology is flawed. Signatures naturally vary over time, particularly when someone is experiencing health challenges. And the IP address evidence? The phone forwarding. The attorney shifted. Marcus Chen had power of attorney. He was authorized to access his father's accounts and manage his affairs. The method he used to do so is immaterial. Judge Morrison turned to Thomas. Counselor? Thomas stood. He didn't need notes. Your Honor, power of attorney authorizes someone to act on behalf of another person. It does not authorize theft. The evidence shows a systematic pattern of deception. Harold Chen's signatures were reproduced on documents he never saw. Money was transferred from his accounts without his knowledge. Security measures were circumvented to prevent him from knowing what was happening. This was not estate management. This was robbery. He walked the judge through the timeline. The insurance policy. The forged signatures. The email chain where Dad asked what he'd signed and Marcus deflected. The phone records. The bank logs. Dr. Patel's testimony about Dad's cognitive impairment. Every piece laid out in order, building the case piece by piece. Marcus's attorney tried to interrupt twice. The judge held up her hand. I'll hear from Mr. Marcus Chin directly, she said. Under oath. Marcus stood. The clerk swore him in. His hand shook when he placed it on the Bible. He steadied it with his other hand, but that was shaking too. The clerk had to repeat, Do you swear? Because Marcus was staring at me instead of listening. When he finally said, I do, his voice cracked on the second word. The judge asked him to explain the insurance policy. My father wanted to make sure I was taken care of, Marcus said. He was worried about his health. He asked me to help him set up the policy. When did he ask you this? In 2019, before the stroke. But the policy is dated November 2020. After the stroke. The conversation was in 2019. The paperwork took time. The recording of the medical interview contains references to healthcare policy changes from 2017. How do you explain that? Marcus didn't answer for a long moment. I don't know what recording you're referring to. The one submitted as Exhibit G. The one your insurance company provided. I haven't heard that recording. We can play it now if you'd like. That won't be necessary. Judge Morrison made a note. She asked about the account transfers. Marcus said Dad had authorized them. She asked why Dad's emails suggested he didn't remember signing documents. Marcus said Dad was confused. She asked why the IP addresses traced to Seattle when Dad was in Washington State. Marcus said he must have made those transfers on Dad's behalf. Under your power of attorney? Yes. Power of attorney to transfer money from your father's account to an account you controlled personally? Marcus loosened his tie. I'd never seen him do that. Not in court, not at depositions, not anywhere. He was always composed. But his hand went to his collar and pulled at the knot like it was choking him. Marcus's attorney stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to request a recess to... Denied. Mr. Chin, did you transfer $387,000 from your father's accounts to accounts under your control? I was managing his assets. That's not what I asked. Marcus looked at his attorneys. Neither of them met his eyes. Yes, he said. The judge set down her pen. I'm granting the petition to contest. This will is invalidated pending criminal investigation. I'm referring this matter to the prosecutor's office. The gavel came down. The prosecutor filed charges 6 weeks later. 3 counts of first-degree theft. 2 counts of forgery. 1 count of elder abuse. Each one a felony. Marcus's law firm put him on administrative leave the day the indictment was announced. The Seattle bar opened an ethics investigation. His wife filed for separation 2 weeks after that. The criminal trial moved faster than the civil case. Marcus's attorneys tried to negotiate a plea. The prosecutor wasn't interested. They had the evidence. They had the timeline. They had Marcus's own testimony from the probate hearing where he'd admitted transferring the money. The trial lasted 8 days. The jury came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 6 years. Minimum security, because Marcus was a first-time offender and non-violent. But 6 years. And restitution of $387,000 plus interest. And he'd never practice law again. The bar revocation was automatic with the felony convictions. Thomas handled the estate redistribution. The original will from 2019 was reinstated. Everything split 50-50, exactly like Dad had intended. The house, the accounts, the pension. The insurance policy was voided. The company didn't pay out on fraudulent policies. I didn't care. The money Marcus had stolen was returned, plus penalties. The investment portfolio he'd built with Dad's money was liquidated. Every cent came back. As executor, I had to document everything. Every account Marcus had touched. Every transfer he'd made. Every lie he'd told to bank representatives and insurance agents and notaries. I sat in conference rooms and explained the fraud to people who kept asking how a son could do this to his father. I didn't have an answer that made sense. I went through Dad's house room by room after everything was settled. Sarah came with me. We packed up the things worth keeping and donated the rest. In Dad's dresser, Sarah stopped. She picked up the watch. Marcus wore this at the funeral, she said. I remember because he kept checking the time during your eulogy. I looked at it. The leather band was worn where Dad's wrist had rubbed it for 20 years. Marcus had taken it to get serviced while Dad was still alive. I'd found the receipt from a jeweler in Seattle. Battery replacement. 2 weeks before Dad died. Why would he give it back? Sarah asked. I didn't have an answer. Maybe guilt. Maybe fear once he knew he was caught. I put the watch in a box with Dad's other things. I didn't want to wear it. In the garage, I found Dad's tools. The ones he'd wanted Marcus to have according to the original will. Hand planes he'd collected over 40 years. Chisels from his father. A table saw he'd maintained like it was a vintage car. The will specified those for Marcus. I followed it. I had them shipped to the prison where Marcus was serving his sentence. I included a note, per Dad's wishes. He wanted you to have these. I didn't hear back. The house sold in 3 months. Market value plus a little more. A young family bought it. 2 kids and a dog. They wanted to know if the magnolia tree in the backyard was staying. Said yes. Dad had planted that tree when Mom died. He'd sat under it every evening in summer. The new owners promised to take care of it. I split the proceeds with Marcus. His half went straight to his restitution account. My half went into a trust for my kids' education. Sarah and I talked about what to do with Dad's personal money, the accounts that had been drained and restored. We donated $50,000 to the Alzheimer's Association in Dad's name. The rest we kept. College funds. Retirement. The future Dad had wanted to provide for. Marcus's parole hearing is in 4 years. I won't be there. I drive past Dad's old house sometimes. Not often. Maybe once a month when I'm running errands on that side of town. The new family painted the shutters blue. They built a swing set in the backyard where Dad used to have his garden. The magnolia tree is bigger than I remember. It blooms every spring, white flowers that last about 2 weeks before they drop and cover the lawn like snow. Dad used to rake them up and complain about the mess, then sit under the tree the next evening like he couldn't stay away. I kept some of Dad's things. His books, mostly. History books and biographies. Books about the Depression and World War II. Books he'd read and reread until the spines broke and the pages yellowed. I have them on a shelf in my classroom now. Students borrow them sometimes. I write Dad's name inside the front cover so everyone knows where they came from. Haroldson. A man who left post-it notes reminding people to check their oil and floss their teeth. A man who believed the small things mattered. Sarah asks sometimes if I regret how it ended. If I wish I'd handled it differently. Let Marcus keep some of the money, maybe. Worked it out between us instead of letting the law handle it. I don't. What Marcus did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't desperation. It was calculated. Years of planning. Years of waiting for Dad to be vulnerable enough to exploit. You don't forgive that kind of theft. You can't. Marcus wrote me a letter from prison last year. His lawyer must have told him not to, but he did anyway. It was careful. Didn't admit anything directly. Said he was sorry for the pain our family had been through. Said he'd made errors in judgment during a difficult time. Said he hoped eventually we could rebuild our relationship. I read it once and put it in a drawer. I haven't responded. My son asked about him last month. He's 14 now, old enough to understand some of it. He wanted to know why Uncle Marcus didn't come to family things anymore. I told him the truth. I said Marcus had stolen from Grandpa when Grandpa was sick. I said there were consequences for that. My son thought about it for a minute, then asked if people could change. If Marcus could change. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him people make mistakes and grow and become better. But what Marcus did wasn't a mistake. It was 3 years of planning. It was looking at our dying father and seeing a payday. I don't know, I said. Maybe. But I don't think I'll ever find out. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Marcus thought he'd been clever. He thought planning and patience and legal knowledge would protect him. He thought the tools of his profession would be enough to hide what he'd done. But theft is still theft, regardless of how it's dressed up. Betrayal is still betrayal, even when it's executed with precision. Dad taught me that honest work matters. He lived it every day, in the post-it notes he left, in the way he maintained his tools, in the small reminders that the details count. Marcus proved it too, just from the other side. Some lessons you learn by example. Others you learn in a minimum security prison, making restitution at $47 a month for the next 30 years. Family is supposed to mean something more than opportunity. Dad understood that. I do too.